All right. So we're going to start our Henrich article et al. Look at all those authors that looks at markets, religion, community size, and the evolution of fairness and punishment. So this study found some surprising effects that weren't so surprising to economists, but were surprising to psychologists. So let's just give this a quick read and see where we're at. Large-scale society in which strangers regularly engage in mutually beneficial transactions are puzzling. That's an interesting statement, right? The fact that we cooperate is puzzling. The evolutionary mechanisms associated with kinship and reciprocity, which underpin much of primate sociality, do not readily extend to large, unrelated groups. It's not just puzzling that we work in groups, it's puzzling that we maintain such large groups. Like right now, how many people are we connected to via, social networks and things like that? Theory suggests that evolution of such societies may have required forms and institutions that sustain fairness in ephemeral exchanges. So ephemeral is like one time, there'll be no consequence for it. If that is true, then engagement in larger scale institutions such as markets and world religions should be associated with greater fairness. That's quite a prediction, right? Most of us, when we're in our classes, particularly our RCC 400s, we talk about how large markets like capitalism and religions often lead to bad sort of consequences, not fairness. So they are testing that engagement in these large-scale components, markets and world religions, should be associated with greater fairness, and larger communities should punish unfairness more. So they're making two predictions there, right? Number one, that participation in markets and world religions should lead to fairness, and that larger communities should punish unfairness more than smaller communities. Why would that be? Well, that's because larger communities, can't really correct unfairness. Once it happens and somebody gets away, they get away forever. And so this is actually a really cool paper. The thoughts in this paper, they're pretty big. It's like, does participating in a world religion or a world economic market make you more fairer, because we need fairness in order for these things to work? And then in larger communities, do they have more punishment strategies? Because if they don't, then people are just going to walk all over them because they can be anonymous and they can ruin society. So, I think that's a pretty interesting question with what's going on right now, right? When somebody leaves their house and puts, other folks at danger of dying, right, which is what's going on right now, are larger communities going to use more punishment strategies? So like in the United States, are we going to throw them in jail? Right? But in a smaller community, are you just going to ostracize that person, make fun of them to the point where they change? So what they're saying is that these large societies are anonymous, essentially, have lost their connection, and likely will have to use punishment in the moment, immediate punishment, to rectify any society-harming behavior. However, if you're in a smaller society, you're not going to use this as much, likely because you got reputation to hold people accountable for. That's likely going to be the idea that gets perpetuated here. Using 3 behavioral experiments administered across 15 diverse populations, we show that market integration, measured as the percentage of purchased calories, so think about that, the number of calories you purchase a week, a month, or whatever, tells you how much you're integrated into the market versus how much you farm and eat off your farming, right? Positively, we show that market integration positively correlates with fairness, while community size positively correlates with punishment. So both, the more you're integrated into the market, the fairer you are, likely because when it's dealing with money, you know that losing money hurts, and you've experienced that. You don't want other people to go through that, likely because of empathy. They don't mention empathy because they're not measuring empathy, but I bet empathy is at the heart of this. And then they have, when you're in a larger community, community size positively correlates with punishment. Larger communities punish more. Participation in a world religion is associated with fairness, although not across all measures. These results suggest that modern prosociality is not solely the product of an innate psychology, but also reflects norms and institutions that have emerged over the course of human history. So going back to my take what we want, get a virus theory, okay, that I brought up last time, here, by engaging in world markets, we get the ability to trade, to buy, to broadcast our labor, to do all this interesting stuff. But conversely, we also learn to be nicer to others because society needs that for these large-scale cooperatives to survive. And I think that's really interesting. We're just thinking about it in terms of the economy. I want to buy food, like how they measured it. I want to buy food so I can eat food so that I can have what I want, right? Well, when you're engaging in that kind of process and that kind of behavior, you also can't be a freeloader. You can't be a thief. You can't, ruin society by not being fair. So you can't just right now, if you owned a gas shop, you couldn't just raise your prices $4 because we're in a crisis, right? That would be unfair, and larger societies are going to punish you, and smaller societies are probably going to ruin your reputation, right? But by engaging in the larger society, we've developed fairness towards strangers, which is weird. Perfect. Now let's get into this a little bit, since we get an idea of what they're saying, what their take home is. They did some research. Let's get a handle on this. At the onset of the Holocene, the stabilization of global climates created possibilities for the emergence of larger-scale sedentary human societies. Okay, before the Holocene, which I'm not gonna lie, I don't know what it is. Let's hit this up. Holocene. Holocene, relating to the Holocene is the current global geological epoch. All right, so there's all those, I don't know them all. There's all those geological time periods, the dinosaurs died and stuff. We're in the Holocene. The Holocene is the stabilization of environments on our planet. I learned something, you learned something. Isn't that wonderful? Over the next 10 millennia, 10,000 years, the scale of some human communities dramatically expanded from kin-based foraging bands to complex, intensely cooperative societies in which strangers frequently engage in mutually beneficial transactions. Okay, I'm going to stop because I want to see what number 2 is, what the evidence is. I've always heard that we used to be hunter-gatherer societies, right? And I'm now looking at the evidence that they're using to make this claim. And it's a book I read when I was your age called Guns, Germs, and Steel by Jared Diamond, The Fates of Human Societies. This is a popular press book. I've read that book, and I can't, do I feel it's a conclusive result? I don't know. I would like more specific details cited there, because I'm left wanting to know, well, what do you mean we were hunter-gatherers? Where's your evidence coming from? It's coming from a popular press book called Guns, Germs, and Steel. And I'm okay with this. I do this myself, right? But, this is like a pretty popular book. Here, maybe I can click on Amazon. You can see it. Right? We can see what the ratings on it are. I'm feeling a little fun today. I don't see ratings for it, though, unfortunately. No, I see some ratings, but I can't find them. Oh, okay. It's like a 5-star book with 3,427 ratings. It's a good book. Do I view it as scientific evidence? I kind of don't, honestly. And that's just me. You can. I don't have to. Okay, but I'm still unsatisfied. I don't have evidence suggesting that humans were hunter-gatherers. All I have is Guns, Germs, and Steel, which, I think misses the mark on colonialization a little bit. and like purpose and activity. When I read his book, it kind of, and I read it like when I was your age, so I might be wrong. I felt that book said that like, oh, it was just kind of like global colonial oppression was just kind of like an accident because like humans are evil, but these humans had guns, germs, and steel. Anyways. Consistent with life in these large-scale societies, behavioral experiments performed with people from these populations reveal fair, trusting, and cooperative behavior among strangers, even in one-shot encounters. We share in the Western world, and we got to make that clear because that's what number 3 is referring to. Two major theoretical approaches have sought to explain both the relatively rapid expansion of human societal scales and the puzzling prosocial behavior observed in experiments. I mean, let's take a step off, right? I like to think out loud when I'm talking to y'all. Our society's puzzled. We're puzzled that our societies grew and we became more cooperative instead of less cooperative. But if you go back to the original ideas presented at the beginning, it makes sense. So we're kind of being straw personed here, right? Like, this is a straw person argument, something we can easily burn down. The reason why we had to get more cooperative is because, like they said a couple sentences ago, is that large-scale societies wouldn't exist without cooperation. We just couldn't do it. The first approach proposes that humans possess an innate social psychology. Maybe we do. Calibrated to life in the small-scale societies of our Paleolithic ancestors, no evidence cited there. Rooted in the evolutionary logic of kinship and reciprocity, no evidence there. These heuristics were mistakenly extended to non-kin, mistakenly extended, no evidence there. And ephemeral interactance as societies expanded with the emergence of agriculture. Agriculture. That's the change that rooted us down, allowed us to stay in one place, and caused us to develop these large-scale societies and mistakenly apply our kinship to others. Now, I want to critique some of the ideas here because I'm like, wait, how do you know that kinship with others isn't the foundation of who we are? Right? Like, kinship doesn't just mean genes. We've been living in small group societies for a very long time, and units and peoples and things like that. And in order for those units and peoples to function, people had to be nice to each other at the small scale. They're not necessarily genetic kin, they're just friends. Who in here has a friend on the other side of the globe that they can talk to because of the internet? Maybe who in here has a friend that they've never seen and only know on the internet? I mean, I know I've had my fair share, right? But this idea that being friendly is a new change just rubs me the wrong way, and I think it justifies a lot of the bad actions of humanity. I think us being friendly and kind to each other is probably a human trait. It's not always present, but in general, I think we can be really kind to each other, even though we don't always see that. So, I'm just kind of putting it out there. They're putting out, like, their base ideas are that humans are evil. And I'm like, I haven't really found evidence for that except for, they cited guns, germs, and steel, and then they said agriculture, and they didn't cite any evidence. I'm not a fan of that style. From this view, the prosocial behavior observed in experiments directly reflects the operation of these ancient heuristics. Let's go see what they cite for 4 and 5. And I won't do this too much. I know you don't have all day, but if I'm going to read an article, I'm going to read it right. So I'm going to see if I can find this article with a quick Google search. If I can, I won't. All right, so it looks like this is no, maybe. So this is an article that I'd probably am going to read. I'm not going to find a quick summary of it, I don't think. And then I'm finding this article. So I'll go look up that study, see what they found, and then this one I should be able to find. It's a Science magazine article. So I just want to make sure I'm grabbing the right one. 2000 Science Mag. I'm clicking the link here. So this is an interim report. This isn't even an actual scientifically peer-reviewed paper, and you can tell by the graphics, and there's dates in here. There's some data. I just don't know how much I trust stuff that's not peer-reviewed. Maybe it is. Let me check. Yeah, I'm not really feeling this one either as a respectable... Oh, wait. But that's because I tried to open a science article. Why didn't that happen? Okay, I don't know. So let me go ahead. And, I'm just going to move on with the article. But I'm just saying those are two that I'm going to look up because these are questions that I've been interested in for a long time. Am I going to look them up now? No, because I'm trying to do one thing at a time. I just keep getting distracted. All right. And I promise I won't look up any more articles. But that's the kind of thing you need to be doing to figure out truth. Let me step back in. An alternative approach proposes that a crucial ingredient in the rise of more complex societies was the development of new social norms and informal institutions that are capable of domesticating our innate psychology for life in ever-expanding populations. Translation: culture evolved to control us better, if you're following my thread throughout this semester. Larger, more complex societies prospered and spread to the degree that their norms and institutions effectively sustained successful interaction in ever-widening socioeconomic spheres well beyond individuals' local networks of kin and long-term relationships. What that is saying is that, one, larger and more complex, that's subjective, but they're saying societies like the United States, like Britain, like the Netherlands, Western European white nations have spread their culture mostly throughout the globe, right? At a very high level. Now you see this as well. You can make a case for other groups spreading their culture. I can get very good Japanese food in some cities in the United States, particularly Sacramento is where I've had the best Japanese food, right? You got food, but do the TV shows a little bit, right? We have Parasite being a global phenomenon and great movie. Will that continue, right? So one exception doesn't prove the rule, but when I go to any country, I can hit up a McDonald's, a KFC, a Pizza Hut, a Domino's. I can hit up basically a bunch of American stores, a bunch of American ways of life. I can see American movies, no problem. They're even, presented in English, subtitled in the language of the nation that I'm in. So I've seen that multiple times. So, just some cultures got large and used this largeness to spread across the globe. It is these particular norms and their gradual internalization as proximate motivations that recalibrate our innate psychology for life in small-scale societies in a manner that permits successful, larger-scale cooperation and exchange in vast communities. No real evidence there. There's a lot of conjecture right now, but the ideas are cool. It's like, how did we go? Well, one, if we went from small to large, how did we go there? And number two, why did we go there? From the cultural perspective, the culture gets a lot out of this. The culture is spread throughout the globe. Its ideas are spread to others. It gets more followers, more people doing what it wants to do, particularly in this case, global economic capitalism. Much research suggests that norms arise because humans use evolved learning mechanisms to calibrate their behavior, motivations, and benefits to variable circumstances. Evolved learning mechanisms. So one, now they're assuming that learning is passed down through generations. There's some evidence for that, but I think that's stated a little strongly, right? They're evolved learning mechanisms. I would say they're culturally evolved. They exist out in the culture, and we learn them while we're kids, while we're growing up, while we're living in culture. But to say they're evolved learning mechanisms, to me, is kind of a little bit of a misnomer, and we haven't quote unquote proven that yet. Modeling works means computers. You let computers do it. Modeling works shows that when these learning mechanisms are applied to different kinds of social interactions, such a large-scale cooperation or ephemeral exchange, individually costly behaviors can be sustained by punishment, signaling, and reputation mechanisms. I read that poorly. Let me go again. Modeling work shows that when these learning mechanisms are applied to different kinds of social interactions, such as large-scale cooperation or ephemeral exchange, individually costly behaviors can be sustained by punishment. Whoa! Individually costly behaviors can be sustained by punishment. We can make you do stuff you don't want to do by punishing you. Hence, grades in the economy, right? You're experiencing this right now. Signaling, I don't know, maybe that's when I honk at somebody when they cut me off so that they're nicer to other people, maybe. And reputational mechanisms, so ruining your reputation, you're a bad person. By sustaining such behaviors, norms can facilitate trust, fairness, and cooperation in a diverse array of interactions, thereby allowing the most productive use of unevenly distributed skills, knowledge, and resources, as well as increasing cooperation in exchange, public goods, and warfare. Whoa! If we sustain these behaviors, the norms that we use to facilitate these behaviors, particularly punishment, right, reputation and signaling, and the norms that we use to define what's good and bad, can facilitate trust, fairness, and cooperation in a diverse array of interactions, thereby allowing the most productive use of unevenly distributed skills. That means we all do skills that benefit everybody, even if my skills are 10 times the benefit of your skills, or your skills are 10 times the benefit of my skills. Knowledge, if we know more than those that don't, right? We are educated folks, so we have read a little bit more. We have a little bit more knowledge than folks that haven't been in college, and resources. Even the very act of paying for college, we have to acknowledge we have some level of resources, whether it's access to direct money from our relatives, or whether it's access to people who are willing to help give us scholarships, so access to scholarships that let us go to school. As well as increasing cooperation, so we all work together. I do my part, you do your part, in exchange for public goods like roads and warfare protection. Not sugarcoating that one. These processes do help build up one of the strongest cultural practices of war. Right? We do war. To me, war is the ultimate example of cultural sacrifice. I will die for a belief system that was created before me, that, doesn't necessarily benefit me other than giving me a consistent meaning system, a consistent meaning of life. More effective norms and institutions can spread among societies by a variety of theoretically and empirically grounded mechanisms, including conquest and assimilation, colonialism, preferential imitation of more successful stories. That's when folks see the way a certain group of people live, and they want to live that way too, so they start mimicking and doing these things just because that looks like a better way to live. And these are individual choices. Not everybody has the same idea of what's a good place to live. I myself did this when I lived in my van for a year, because I thought that would be relatively stress-free. Boy, was I wrong. But I chose to engage in that because it was preferential imitation of what I was seeing in the world. Or forward-looking decisions made by leaders or high-status coalitions. So, a leader, a person in power, can make a decision that makes your society better than other societies, right? And by better, I just mean in a more advantaged position. Maybe economically, as this paper is discussing, right? But right now, we're dealing with a lot of interesting stuff with work in American society. How can we maintain productivity as a nation and happiness as a people? Something that we're unable to do right now. Or, with our leaders, are they actually working for us, using their high status to help us out? Well, you kind of see that right now during the COVID epidemic. You have nations, leaders sending money and resources to each other. You have Jeff Bezos, and Elon Musk, buying thousands of ventilators that should have been purchased by our tax dollars, not by folks that don't pay taxes. Right, but these are all things that are interrelated. Particularly this example where we got leaders in our society have the resources to buy ventilators, but if you or I, or at least I assume, I'm sure some of you are in a different tax bracket than me, but if you or I wanted to buy a ventilator, that would be a really difficult purchase. Norms that enhance fairness among strangers are likely causally interconnected with the diffusion of several kinds of institutions. Here we focus on two. One, the expansion of both the breadth and intensity of market exchange, capitalism, and two, the spread of world religions. Capitalism and religions. These are our two strongest institutions that are like cross-national, and they exist all over the place, right? A lot of them. There's a lot of world religions, and basically everybody, basically everybody participates in capitalism to some degree. Let's look at these two. The efficiency of market exchange involving infrequent or anonymous interactions improves with an increasingly shared set of motivations and expectations related to trust, fairness, and cooperation. So these outcomes improve when trust, fairness, and cooperation are present. This lowers the transaction cost, raises the frequency of successful transactions, and increases long-term rewards. This lowers transaction costs, the cost that you pay for just interacting with another person, raises the frequency of successful transactions. So that means win-win situation. You get what you want, they get what they want. People aren't getting hurt. People are just trading, but they're doing it with money. And increases long-term rewards. Yeah, wealth, things like that. Although frequent and efficient exchanges among strangers are now commonplace, studies of non-human primates, they're non-human primates, humans are a primate, that's all that means. Those are like, chimps and stuff. And small-scale societies could be those that are untouched by colonialism, or could be those that are just small and rural. Suggest that during most of our evolutionary history, transactions beyond the local group, and certainly beyond the ethno-linguistic unit, were fraught with danger, mistrust, and exploitation. 2:16 and 19. Now, these are the things that kind of get me, and I'm stopping myself from looking those up. This is one of my pet peeves. I don't believe the evidence actually supports this, because if you look at other articles, you show that when people come in contact with each other, they have sex, they trade. Right? This has always been true. When people come in contact with each other, sex happens, trade happens, trade of objects, trade of money, trade of cultural ideas, trade of values, trades of beliefs, right? I think that's one of the interesting things of being human. We don't just trade products on the capitalist scale. We trade ideas. We trade, ways to present ourselves, art, culture, all that fun stuff. Thus, we propose that such market norms, right, those norms of friendliness and responsibility that had to be in place for large markets to work, may have evolved as part of an overall process of societal evolution to sustain mutually beneficial exchanges in contexts where established social relationships were insufficient. In a context now where my family doesn't produce the goods I need a new society that allows me to engage with all this trade that's going on with people I don't know. If our theory is correct, then measures of fairness in situations lacking relationship information, for example, anonymous others, should positively co-vary with market integration. All that's saying is the more integrated you are into capitalism, the more fair your interactions with others should be, because you're almost because not just the system requires you to be fair, but you and the benefits, those long-term benefits they just talked about that are coming to you, need to happen through cooperation. Okay? If you're not engaged in those large-scale religions and those large-scale economic systems, you're not going to observe such friendliness in these interactions. Recent work has also tentatively produced that certain religious institutions, beliefs, and rituals may have co-evolved with the norms that support large-scale societies and broad exchange. Now, stop. I know I'm stopping so much, but it's an interesting paper. What this is saying right here is that religions developed ideas that actually facilitated capitalism. That's the argument here. These ideas of being held accountable, of the Protestant work ethic, which suggests that work is associated with salvation, all help build modern capitalism, because working for money is now like, to us, it's like someone in the 500s working for God's love. Right? That's essentially what's being stated here. And it's not being stated directly, but I'm saying it because I'm making some connections with past research. Recent work has also tentatively proposed that certain religious institutions, beliefs, and rituals may have co-evolved with the norms that support large-scale societies and broad exchange. Intersocietal competition may have favored those religious systems that galvanize pro-social behavior in broader communities, perhaps using both supernatural incentives, for example, hell, and recurrent rituals that intensify group solidarity. So just consistently every Sunday showing up, developing a community with strangers, right? So we're getting there. Consistent with this view, analysis of ethnographic data show that the emergence of moralizing religious increases with greater societal size and complexity. Show that the emergence of moralizing religions increases with greater societal size and complexity. When we get bigger, our religions change to add more morals to the mix, likely because we don't trust each other. Archaeologically, regular rituals and the construction of monumental religious architecture co-emerge with societal size and complexity. In experiments, unconsciously priming the faithful with religious concepts favors greater fairness towards anonymous others. I can make you more fair by just flashing you a picture of your religious leader. This suggests that, in contrast to the religions that likely dominated our evolutionary history, modern religions, modern cultural inventions, such as Christianity and Islam, may be unusual in ways that buttress the norms and institutions that sustain larger scale interaction. They got a whole argument online about this one. If this theory is correct, then greater fairness towards anonymous others should be associated with adherence to world religions. They're arguing that Christianity and Islam are unusual because their norms of, like, people foreign with others, right? Like from the Jesuit value system, that fosters cooperation and that fostered success in a large-scale society. So in one way, the hidden message here is that religious ideas that are cultural ideas, help shape institutional practices that help shape actual belief systems and behavior as well. So these changes in the cultural institutions not just led to societal change, allowed some societies to dominate other societies in terms of what they're calling advanced and complex. Evolutionary approaches to norms also afford a prediction about the willingness of individuals across populations to engage in the costly punishment of norm violations. All that means there is a willingness of individuals to punish others even when it's costly to themselves or uncomfortable. Theoretical modeling, computers, reveals at least two different kinds of norm stabilizing mechanisms. One involves reputational effects in which norm violators are sanctioned, in another interaction by, for example, not receiving aid in a didactic helping situation. And a second involves the use of diffuse, costly punishment. So, let's read that again. One involves reputational effects in which norm violators are sanctioned in another interaction by, for example, not receiving aid in a didactic helping situation. So people that have bad reputations are not helped by others, because why would you? They're going to crap on society. They're going to crap on you. They're not going to give you what you need. And a second involves the use of diffuse, costly punishments. I don't know what that means. The second involves one involves reputation. So, okay, now I do. The second response is diffuse, widespread, but costly punishment. You speed, trust me, I just recently did this, you get a $120 ticket, right? I'm not going to speed, and maybe I shouldn't because I might hurt a child, right? Maybe I should slow down on that lead foot I got, right? So that punishment has made me thinking twice about why I'm doing it, and that punishment, while it's probably just about the economics of that as a city, makes me think about the morality of my behavior and harming those that are innocent. Because the effectiveness of reputational systems in sustaining norms degrades as rapidly as communities expand, fairness in larger communities must increasingly be maintained by diffuse punishment. That is, larger communities should punish more because reputation doesn't work. Experiments. The evidence presented below derives from a second round of cross-cultural experiments that were designed to illuminate findings from our first project. Read about their previous work. This round replaces 10 populations from our earlier effort with 10 new ones. So they're basically redoing a study they did before, while resampling from 5 of the same populations used previously. We can look at table 1 to figure this out, but I'm going to skip it because I know we don't all have time for that. We can give it a look. Yep, that's all it is. All the populations. I'm not interested in that. I'm trying to figure out what they did. This analysis complements prior work from our team, which focused on the distributional patterns of punishment by seeking to explain the variation in our experimental measures of both fairness and punishment. Our analysis converges with recent work comparing diverse industrialized populations. So they're giving us some context there, but they're being very vague. I don't know what most of that meant, and that's okay. We're going to get it from context in a second. If markets and world religions are linked to the norms that sustain exchange in large-scale societies, we expect that experimental measures of fairness in anonymous interactions will positively be positively associated with measures of involvement in these two institutions. So if you're fair in an anonymous interaction, they're predicting that you're from, capitalism or a world religion. You use it a lot. To test this, we used 3 experiments that were designed to measure individuals' propensities for fairness and their willingness to punish unfairness across 15 populations that vary in their degree of market integration and their participation in world religions. 3 experiments, so we're going to get that. Fairness and their willingness to punish unfairness. That goes hand in hand. Large-scale societies have to punish. Part of your duty is to punish rule breakers. So if you engage in a large-scale market environment or a large-scale religion where being nice is essential to global cultural domination, which is really what we're talking about here, let's not kid ourselves, right? Then we would expect that those individuals that participate in those situations the most to be the fairest in their own personal behaviors and to be the ones that punish the most. If this sounds like you, welcome to the club. This does sound like me. I know I struggle when, somebody violates a norm in our society that hurts others. I view it, I call them selfish, I call them mean, I call them self-focused. It really bothers me. And sometimes I've been known to let them know that they're violating rules of fairness. For example, I used to have cars that would I used to be a lot bolder in my 20s, but I'd have cars basically come up and try to roll through me through a crosswalk. I'd jump on the hood. You know what I mean? That's the level of that's a level I was willing to hurt myself for my cultural beliefs when I was 20, right? I believed, hey, that walking, I get to walk here. I'm in a crosswalk. You need to stop your car. I'm going to slap the door. What you going to do about it? You're the one breaking the rule, right? Like that's literally how it worked for me. So also, you can see when I read stuff, I connect it to my own life. If markets and world religions are linked to the norms that sustain exchange in large-scale societies, we expect that measures of fairness in anonymous interactions will positively co-vary with measures of involvement in these two institutions. To test this, we used 3 experiments that were designed to measure individuals' propensities for fairness and their willingness to punish across 15 populations that vary in their degree of market integration and the participation in world religions. Our 3 experiments are dictator game, ultimatum game, and third-party punishment games. We're going to learn about those. These are fun. I used the dictator game in my own research. In the dictator game, 2 anonymous players are allotted a sum of money, the stake. In a one-shot interaction, Player 1 must decide how to divide this sum between himself or herself or themselves and player 2. Player 2 receives the allocation and the game ends. Player 1's offer to player 2 provides a measure of player 1's behavioral fairness in this context. Dictator game. There's $1. There's two of you. One of you gets to decide how to split it. The ultimatum game. This one's a little bit more fun. It's a take on the dictator game. In the ultimatum game, two anonymous players are again allotted a sum in a one-shot interaction. Player 1 can offer a proportion of this to player 2. Player 2, before hearing the actual offer from player 1, must decide whether to accept or reject each of the possible offers in 10% increments. Okay, so that's weird. Before I hear the offer, I have to decide if I'm going to reject it. So imagine you had $1. Are you going to reject 0? Heck yeah, I'm rejecting 0. 10 cents? Heck yeah, I'm rejecting 10 cents. 20? Heck yeah, I'm rejecting 20 cents. 30? Heck yeah, I'm rejecting 30 cents. 40? I might think about it. I might take it. 40 cents isn't too bad. But honestly, nope, I'm going to reject that. 50 cents I'll take. I also won't take 60 cents, 70 cents, 80 cents, 90 cents, or $1 because it's not fair. I'm going to force this person to be fair. Right? But that's the ultimatum game. I get to decide if I'm going to reject the offer. Decisions are binding. If player 2 specified that he or she would accept the amount of the actual offer, then player 2 receives the offered amount and player 1 gets the remainder. If player 2 specified that he or she would reject the offered amount, you saw what I did, then both players receive 0. I will take 0 over 70 cents. That's extreme, right? Maybe, actually, I'm going to go back now. I'm going to go and change. I'll accept anything over 50. I mean, if you want to be nice to me, might as well be nice to me. I'm here giving my time. I should get something for it. If people are motivated purely by money maximization, player 2s will always accept any positive offer because 10 cents is better than 0. Player 1 should offer the smallest non-zero amount because this is player 1 should offer, and player 1 should offer 10 cents because this is a one-shot anonymous interaction. Player 2's willingness to reject provides a measure of punishment. Player 1's offer measures a combination of social motivations and an assessment of the likelihood of rejection. This gives us a second behavioral measure of fairness. Yeah, I would say so. And if you're player 2, it also says how much you're willing to punish yourself and others for not being fair. In the third-party punishment game, 2 players are again allotted a stake, but now a third player, the referee, also receives the equivalent of 1/2 of the stake. Okay, so there's a stake, right? It's $1. Player 3 gets 50 cents. Player 1 must decide how much money to allocate to player 2, just like before, who has no choices, just like in the dictator game. Player 2 doesn't get to say, I'm rejecting this. Player 3, before hearing the actual amount that player 1 allocated to player 2, this allows individual differences not to impact things, has decided whether to pay 20% of his or her allocation to punish player 1 for each of the possible offers in 10% increments. If punished, player 1 loses triple the amount paid by player 3. All right, so this one was weird. But you got player 1 and player 2 in a dictator game. Player 3 gets half a stake. They get 50 cents. They're watching this game, and they get to make decisions about punishing player 1. So let's see how this is done in their example. Because right now it's not totally clear. So player 3, before hearing the actual amount that player 1 allocated to player 2, has decided whether to pay 20% of his or her allocation to punish player 1 for each of the possible offers in 10% increments. If punished, player 1 loses triple the amount paid by player 3. Okay, so now let's suppose the stake is $100. If player 1 offers $10 to player 2, keeping 90, whoa. And player 3 wants to punish this offer amount, then player 1 takes home wants to punish this offer amount, so 20% of half the stake. So half the stake is 50. 20% of 50 is 25. I don't know if the math's working out right now, but we'll get through this. And and player 3 wants to punish this offer amount, then player 1 takes home 60, 90 minus the 30. Okay, because what the person did, player 3 paid $10 to punish that choice. So player 2 gets $10 because that's what they were given, and player 3 gets 40, 50 minus 10. If player 3 had instead decided not to punish offers of $10, then the take-home amounts would be 90, 10, and 50 respectively. So this is a game where the punisher gets no benefit. They only take away money from player 1. That is harming oneself to maintain the social fairness norms. Because a money maximizing player 3 would never pay to punish a similarly motivated player, a similarly motivated player 1 should always give 0 to player 2. Thus, player 3's willingness to pay provides another measure of punishment. Player 1's offer measures a mixture of his or her social motives in this context and an assessment of the punishment threat. This provides a third behavioral measure of fairness. Right? So actually, I'm going to argue that player 3 is engaging in punishment, but that's in order to maintain fairness. And player 1, their desire to share money indicates a sensitivity towards being fair. These experiments, with their salient contextual cues of cash and anonymity, seem well suited to tapping the particular norms that support cooperation and exchange among ephemeral interactants in market transactions. Cash is closely associated with market transactions and often signals a desire to avoid a longer-term non-market relationship. Anonymity in our games means that players lack the cues or information necessary to apply the expectations and motivations associated with other kinds of relationships, such as those based on kinship, reciprocity, or status differences, forcing players to default to local norms for dealing with people outside durable relationships. Note that right there. How are you going to deal with strangers? How you deal with strangers tells you your local norms for dealing with people outside of your kin group. However, an important concern in interpreting such experiments involves the degree to which participants accept the experimental institution, believe the anonymity, and worry about the experimenters' judgments of them. So all that's saying there is that there are concerns with being an experiment. Do experiments accept the experimental situation? That means, do they believe it? Do they believe they're actually anonymous? There's going to be some degree of not so much. And do they worry about the experimenter's judgment? In my experience, not really, but some people actually care what scientists think. Just nobody I've ever met. Gosh. Our standardized protocols and methods included the following. 1. Random adult samples from our communities with little attrition in most sites. That means little loss of participants. Excuse me. 2. Stakes set at 1 day's local wage. 1 day worth of work. Wow, that's a good amount of money, right? Even if you're working minimum wage, you work 8 hours a day. That's about $100. It's close to $100. If you're working 5, it's a lot less than that, but my math's off today. So 5 minimum wage is about 12, right? That's still $60. It's a good amount of money for participating in an experiment. 3, a show-up fee of 20% of the stake. You get 20% for just being there. That's a good pay, too. So you get 20% of that 60. Back translation of scripts. One-on-one instruction and pre-game testing for comprehension. So good pre-experimental training. Steps to preclude collusion and contamination. That means not allowing participants to cooperate and contaminate the data, making sure they're actually anonymous. No deception. Everything we say is true in a behavioral economics experiment. I do these, and when I do them, everything I'm telling the participants is true. It's not a lie. I like doing deception in my research, but when I'm doing behavioral economics, I don't lie to them about the money. I pay them, they get it, they get bonuses. I do similar stuff too. And it's just really important that there's no deception involved. Our pregame tasks combined with analysis of the relationships between experimental decisions and measures of comprehension indicate no measurable impact of differences in comprehension on behavior. So everybody understood it. We performed these experiments with 2,148 individuals across populations from Africa, North and South America, Oceania, New Guinea, and Asia that included small-scale societies of hunter-gatherers, marine foragers, pastoralists, horticulturalists, and wage laborers. So right there, they just kind of defined these different ways of life across the world. I don't know if I'd necessarily use these words, but this paper is getting up in years. Table 1 provides the location, mapped in figure supplemental 3, environment, economic base, residence pattern, and sampling information for each population, as well as averages for 3 key variables. I don't care about table 1. That's not telling me my results. What are the results? First, right? What am I looking for? I'm looking at participation in capitalism leads to greater fairness and greater punishment, and participation in world religion leads to greater fairness and punishment. Let's see what they found. The theory outlined above predicts a positive relationship between our 3 measures of fairness, offers in each game, with market integration and adherence to a world religion. Individuals' offers are measured as a percentage of the total stake, 1 day's local wage, so they're in percentage. Market integration is measured at the household level by calculating the percentage of a household's total calories that were purchased from the market as opposed to homegrown, hunted, or fished, and then averaged to obtain a community level measure. So they have a community level measure for each community. So they do it at the individual level, and they also do it at the community level. We'll have to look at the data, and I'll help you break it down. We use the community average for market integration. I hate the abbreviations, both to remain consistent with our definition of norms, has local equilibria, and to remove day-to-day stochastic variation. That just means random variation. I'm not getting into stochastic variation with y'all. It's weird. It's hard. It takes a while to explain that, but day-to-day random variation. Table 1 shows that the population means for market integration range from 0 to 100%, with a mean of 57.3%. World religion was assessed by asking participants what religion they practiced, and coding these as a binary variable indicating 1 indicating Islam or Christianity and 0 marking the practice of a tribal religion or no religion. Table 1 provides the percentage of each population that adheres to a world religion. The mean value of world religion is 89%. 89% of people in these, a lot of them in remote isolation, were touched by global religions. To analyze these data, we regressed offers on market integration and world religion. All that means is we examined if there was a complex correlation between market integration and fairness and world religion and fairness. So the offers are the fairness, right? As well as 7 control variables. So age, sex, education, income, wealth, household size, and community size. So control variables, you measure them, you remove variation from the dependent variable that's due to them, and what you're left with is a purified form of the dependent variable that is not impacted by age, sex, education, income, wealth, household size, and community size. So any results they report are going to be pure effects of market integration on fairness or participation in world religion on fairness. And they're going to be pure because all these co-founders were removed from the dependent variable. I'm not going to explain to you the process, but I could if you want to learn more. Except for wealth and household size, which are both measured at the household level, and community size, these control variables are individual level measures. We used 30. Now I'm like, what's DG, 20 UG, and I don't know what did I miss? Did I miss these? Oh, community, no. DG, I didn't see DG. Maybe it was way earlier. Here, let me look here. Sam. DGU. Oh, dictator game, ultimatum game, third player punishment game. Okay. Now that I'm not confused, we can go back. We used 30 dictator game, 20 utilitarian game, and 16 third-party punishment game, community level means. So they had 30. dictator games, 26 ultimatum games, and 16 third-player punishment games, community-level means for market integration to predict, 416 dictator games, 400 ultimatum games, and 272 third-player punishment games, and 372 individual offers with a minimal set of controls, or 336 just a bunch of games, individual offers with the full set. Don't worry about that. That's not important yet. I may need that later when I get to the results, but I'm not there yet. Table 2, thank God. Table 2 shows 4 regression models using market integration and world religion to predict all offers together and offers from the DG, UG, and TPG, the different games, separately. Independent of the other socio-demographic variables, the coefficients on market integration are large and significant at conventional levels across all 4 models. I'm just going to get through this. At 20 percentage point increase in market integration is associated with an increase in percentage offered ranging from roughly 2 to 34%. So it's not for me, it's like, okay, 20% point increase in market integration leads you to be fairer by roughly 2 to 3.4%. It's not a huge effect, right? We're not going to sugarcoat that. It's not a huge effect. The same qualitative results are attained for market integration whether one uses household measures, community averages, or population averages. That's an important point. The market integration is successful at all levels of analysis. At the community, at the household, at the person, at the population, right? Let's look at this table too and get a sense for what's going on. So we got a regression table, and all these are fancy coefficient or fancy correlations. So, but they're not. So they did a regression, but they're using unstandardized coefficients. So for every one unit increase in market integration, you get a 12-cent increase in all offers. So I believe they're going to report it in money. 12% increase, or 0.12, not 12 cents. It's a 0.12% increase. For every 1 percentage increase in market integration, you get a 1.2 percentage increase when you look at all offers. Okay? That's just the top line. When you look at the dictator game, a 1 unit increase in market integration, a 1 percentage increase in buying your calories from the store leads to a 0.17% increase in dictator game offsets. You know what? I'm going back to my original interpretation. Stats brain just kicked in. Essentially, a 1% increase in market integration leads to I'm trying to figure out if I can get some clues here. So linear regression models for offers. These ordinary least squared models include 4 additional variables. Coefficients are followed by standard errors indicated with p-values given in parentheses. Nothing, no clue there. Nothing there. Nothing in there for telling me what these numbers are. All right, so here's what they told us earlier. They told us that market integration was a percentage and that our offers were a percentage. In order for us to compare our offers and combine them like this, they have to be a percentage. So a 1 percentage increase in market integration leads to a 0.12 percentage increase in money of all offers. A 0.17 percentage, 1 percentage increase in market integration leads to a 0.17% increase in dictator game fairness. It leads to a smaller but 0.10% increase in ultimatum game offers and about a 0.10 increase in third-party punishment game offers from the dictator. So these are all the measures of fairness that they talked about earlier. I'd really like to see punishment in here. Now let's talk about world religion. They code it 0 or 1. So 0 is not participating in a world religion. 1 is. 80% of the participants participated in a world religion. So participating in a world religion leads to a 5.9% increase in all offers, a 6.4% increase in dictator game offers, a 10.4% increase in ultimatum game offers, and just a tiny 0.45 increase in third-party punishment game offers, right? That's pretty interesting. Let me try to figure out that effect. Why would world religion increase all the other offers you make, but now if you're being judged and possibly punished, it doesn't really lead to an increase in the offers that you make? Also, if you want to look at significance here, which is something I kind of skip sometimes, this comparison is not significant. And this comparison is not significant. So why would participating in a world religion cause others to punish less? Maybe it's, cause others to be less fair when somebody else is punishing them? I don't know. Maybe being watched at any given moment is just how they view life, right? Because there's most world religions have a godlike entity that punishes you. I mean, we'd like to not admit that, but that's how it's interpreted by a lot of people. I don't know. I'm curious to see what their answers are going to say there. Then we can look at these other predictors. Household income per U.S. in $1,000. So if your income increases by $1,000, essentially, I think they standardize that $1,000 in the U.S. versus whatever it is in other places led to, so a $1,000 increase in income led to a 0.096% increase in all offers. Ooh, a decrease in dictator game offers. Ooh, rich people are jerks. A 0.16% increase in ultimatum game offers, and a negative 2.25% decrease in third-party game offers. Let me just make sure that the only thing, so I see that wealth, when you're born wealthy, you notice basically added wealth doesn't really increase the amount you give or decrease it. Household size, the larger your house, the less money you offer. The larger the house, the less money you offer. The larger your house, the less money you offer. The larger the house, the less money you offer, because you need money to take care of those kids. And don't worry about R squared. My only question right now is TPG... Yeah, those are offers. So let's keep reading here. And we're going to try to make sense of it. What am I saying right now? I'm saying that, participation in market integration, 1% increase leads to a significant increase in offers across all 4 conditions. And it might not seem that great, a 0.12% increase, right? But let's do it from when you go from 0 to 100, right? So this is going from 0 to 1. You get a 0.12 increase. Going from 0 to 100%, right, is going to lead to a 12% increase, a 17% increase, a 10% increase, and 11% increase. If I did my math wrong, shoot it my way, okay? But I think I got this one right. So now we're going to so now we see that, right? World religions, for the most part, does increase overall the amount of fairness in offers that one gives. It increases all of them combined. It increases non-significantly dictator game offers. It increases ultimatum game offers, and it doesn't really do anything to third-party punishment offers, which is strange. The other stuff we already talked about. The richer and richer you are for some of these games when you're in complete control. The dictator game, particularly, you are a jerk, but it's not significant. None of those are significant. Look at that. Well, actually, the only one that income is significant is a decrease in third-party punishment scores. And I don't know why. I guess the richer you are when you're being watched, you don't feel like responsible for your actions. I don't know. Maybe you have a comfortable relationship with authority. I don't know. There with wealth, we have only one significant increase. Third-party punishment scores are increased the wealthier you are. When you have a large household size, you can see a trend towards reducing fairness. You're probably just worried about your family, but only one of those was significant. So overall, we're getting an idea for this body of work. What happened here? People with the highest amount of market integration did, in fact, engage in fairer offers. Those with world religion, for the most part, engaged in friendlier offers as well, except for in the TPG. And the one non-significant effect was almost significant. It doesn't make a difference, but it's also not something I'm going to be super strict about, like some folks are. The coefficients on world religion are also large across all offers and in both the ultimatum game and dictator game, though not well estimated in the dictator game. So that's just saying they're not sure about their dictator game results. However, world religion's coefficient are significant across all other specifications. Is that what I saw? Let me see here. Kind of. I think there's a typo there. Let me reread that. Oh, they don't even mention third-party punishment, so that's non-significant. Participating in a world religion is associated with an increase in percentage offered of between about 6 and 10%. Yeah, I'd agree with that. Taken together, these data indicate that going from a fully subsistence-based society with a local religion to a fully market-incorporated society of 100% with a world religion, when you put them together, okay, all they're doing there is fancy algebra. I'm not going to explain it, but they're just doing fancy algebra. With world religion, if you put these together, if you go from no world religion to a world religion and 0% market economy to 100%, you would see roughly 23% increase, 20% and 11% increase in those three games, respectively. This spans most of the... that doesn't matter. Dictator game means range from 26 to 47%, ultimatum game from 25 to 51%, and third-party punishment from 20 to 43%. So across our population, dictator game means range from 26 to 47%. Now I'm going to go look at that table 1. And now I'm going to see if I get it. No, they don't have percentage in here. No, they do not. Let me see if I can find another graph that shows me those. Nope, I don't. I don't see those yet. All right. For the 7 other socioeconomic variables, none of their coefficients is significant across all offers or in the dictator game. For ultimatum game offers, the coefficient on age is also positive. This is just minor stuff. That's just like little details. I don't care about that. For table 2 shows that the coefficients on income, wealth, and household size are significant. So that's what we were talking about it before. Income significantly predicts third-party punishment results. Wealth predicts third-party punishment results. Household size predicts third-party punishment results. That's all they're saying there. Oh. Went too far. Gotta go down here. All right. Figure 1 plots mean offers versus mean market integration value for our 15 populations. Let's check that out. Wow. That's this picture right here. That's quite a picture. Those that had the lowest amounts of market integration, those societies offered the lowest percentage of the stake. So in those, with some exceptions, you can see that, but for the most part, the lower your market integration, the more money you kept for yourself. When I read this, I just think like, oh yeah, I remember that first time I got like screwed over by that machine where you put your quarters in and it gives you stuff out, right? It gives you, pushes more quarters out. I thought I was going to win $1 million. I just remember losing my $5, and it was like the worst day of my life up until that point, right? I was like all bawling, oh, my money, I'm a horrible person. But here we can see that, you know, societies that have high levels of market integration, like the United States and Accra, right, where it's 100% market integration, their offers are closer to the 50% offer that we need in a fair society. Now, everybody's a little less than 50%. You can see that even with market integration, humans are kind of like selfish across the board. It's just you're more selfish when you're more selfish as you get less and less market integration. And I think this graph is cool. I think this tells me the whole story I needed to see. Right? I mean, what I see there is that those that participate in U.S.'s complete market integration are almost fair in their decisions. They keep about 5 cents for themselves, maybe 4 cents for themselves, more than they should, but overall, mostly fair. But you deal with societies that, with the exception of AU, other societies are generally mostly selfish. The less and less market integration they have, likely because they have less experience with the culture, less experience with the empathy, less experience with the pain that being economically screwed over causes other people, and you can see that right here. So, figure 1 plots, we just looked at figure 1. Population mean market integration values account for 52% of the variation in mean dictator game offers. So, in the dictator game, 52% of the variation between people was due to, or at least associated with, market integration, excuse me. In designing the second round of experiments, we sought out an additional New Guinea population, the Sursurunga, because in the first round, the owl of New Guinea revealed highly unusual behavior. So the owl of New Guinea were almost fair, including relatively high offers with little market integration. The AU pattern replicated and now extends to the Sursurunga. However, something about what's going on in New Guinea, something happened there. Both populations, 2 different ones, were highly cooperative, highly friendly. Going against their idea, right? You see, they even tried to obliterate it a little bit. I don't think human societies were always selfish and mean. I think, there's evidence that we have the capacity to be very focused on others and fair, even without market integration or world religions. However, because we targeted a second population that skews our world sample, unrepresented, blah, 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 we examine blah, blah, blah. None of this is really important, but leads to mean I count for blah, blah, blah. They're saying it still counts for, worst case scenario, 58%. Market integration counts for 58%. Complicated statistics. Don't worry about that. I'll read them though. Your population correlation is 0.76. You square that, you get the 58%. Your 95% bootstrap confidence interval, don't worry about that, but that's your 95% confidence interval of the population correlation that they observed. 95% confidence interval of the population correlation that they observed. 95% confidence interval of the population correlation that they observed. Your 95% confidence interval of the population correlation that they observed. Your 95% confidence interval of the population correlation that they observed. That's your 95% confidence interval of the population correlation that they observed. is worst case scenario, the correlation is 0.44. And when you square 0.4, you get 16. So that's 16%. When you square 0.7, you get 58. That's 58%. So worst case scenario, this market integration accounted for 16% of the variation in the DV. Best case scenario accounted for like 83% of the variation in the dependent variable. Market integration accounts for quite a high percentage of variation in the dependent variable. And then they sometimes dropped the out, sometimes left them in. It doesn't matter. The main idea is there. Market integration accounts for a lot of the variation across these population estimates. Whew, this is a long one. We're getting there. We're getting there, though. We'll be done soon. On the punishment side, we looked for a relationship between our individual level measures of punishment from the ultimatum game and the third-party punishment game, and our theoretically important variable CS, which community size. I forgot, right? Like, that's why don't use abbreviations. They're not. They might seem like they're helping you out, but they're not. While controlling for our other 8 variables, don't worry about that. For both the ultimatum game and the third-party punishment game, we reduce the vector of punishment or not. We reduce the vector of punishment or not punishment responses to a single number called a minimal acceptable offer. This is the lowest offer for which an individual no longer punishes. Okay. So, this is the lowest offer for which an individual will no longer punish. This is their minimal acceptable offer. So they calculated that mathematically, or with the data, I'm not clear, but they found the point at which somebody wouldn't punish. Thus, if a player accepts all offers, their MAO is 0. If a player punishes offers of 0 and 10%, but expects all higher offers, their MAO is set at 20%. Their minimally acceptable offer is 20% because they punish at 10% at 0%, right? That's all it is. Boom. To analyze MIOs, we used a regression, blah, blah, stats. This model assumes blah, blah, stats. You don't need to know this. Because the output, blah, blah, stats. Because the output of an OLR, blah, blah, we have captured the effects of a highly significant coefficients for community size in figure 2. So they're saying community size had a high effect, figure 2A and B. Holding the other 8 variables, blah, blah, doesn't matter. Small communities, the size of foraging bands are the least willing to punish, which kind of makes sense. They're not used to it. And as community size increases from 50 to 5,000, there's a dramatic shift from a modal MAO of 0 to 50. So the minimal acceptable offer when you're in a small community size is 0, but when you're in a size of 5,000, it goes up to 50%. Your MAO, you're gonna punish any offer less than 50%. So let's look at that table 2, see if there's anything good there. Minimal acceptable offers, willingness to engage in third-party punishment. Community size of 50%. Those are the white bars. Let's look at them. They're the smallest. We're just going to look at the small and the high because everything else is in between. So that group right there had a minimally acceptable offer Yeah, I'm struggling with this graph a little bit, so it's okay to see that. So what I noticed was that the predicted frequency of the minimally acceptable offer in the third-party punishment game, predicted frequency, so that's a percentage. About 49% of participants accepted 0 in the community size of 50. Okay, so like most of them did. With a minimal acceptable offer of 10%, right, you had about 15% acceptance there. 20% was a minimally acceptable offer of about 10%. 30 was about 10%. 40 was about 8%. 50 was a minimally acceptable offer for about 20%. So that means a majority of participants in here, in the small community size, accepted an offer of 0 as okay. About 48% 8% of them did, right? Then you got about 15% accepting 10, 20%. You got some variation there, but really the important thing to look at is what percentage of people accepted a zero offer. Well, in a community size of 50 is about 49. In a community size of 5,000, it was about 5%. Right? You can see that there. If we look at 10%, we got 15% of the sample size of 50 accepted a 10% fair, and only less than 5% again. You have about 13% of the community size of 50 accepting an offer of 20%, where you get about 9% in the larger size. They're equal for 30, so about 12% and 13, 14% in the small size and the large size accept the offer. But what you can see here is that as you keep moving to 50, most of the participants from a community size of 5,000, their minimally acceptable offer, about 43% of those people, their minimally acceptable offer was fairness, because 50% is fairness. That means they would reject anything that's not fair. And you can see that these percentages here decrease with community size, just like these percentages here decrease with a larger community size. These decrease with a smaller community size. So overall, we're seeing that community size does impact how likely you are to punish in the third-party punishment game. Let's look at the ultimatum game. Do we see the same pattern here? Yes, we do. For the most part, the community size of 50, predicted frequency of MAO in the dictator game. This one was more, or in the ultimatum game. So the third-party punishment game was punishment. This is the ultimatum game. So when the community size was 50, they would accept, 80% of people would accept an offer of 0, right? In the community sizes 5,000, 5% would accept an offer of 0. When the community size was, when the offer was fair, that 50%, and the community size was large, right? 50% of the participants would not accept an offer less than 50%. It was unfair, right? And in terms of, yeah, that's basically what's going on there. If you look at the 0, you get the best understanding of it. 80% of those in community size of 50, 70% of those in community size of 500, 30% of those in community size of 2,500, and only 5% of those in community size of 5,000 would accept an offer of 0, right? And over at the 50 point, we can see that, the minimally acceptable offer, over half of the participants from the larger community size said that their minimally acceptable offer was fairness. So that's what you see there. We end up blah, blah, blah. Let's see what they have to read here. Our theoretical approach makes no predictions about the relationship between punishment and MI, because for small communities there are numerous reputational mechanisms that can sustain equality norms. Similarly, because religion should galvanize the existing mechanisms for norm stabilization, whether participants in a world religion punish more depends entirely on the local stabilization mechanisms, which this is all just saying we didn't do this analysis, so blah, blah, blah. Nevertheless, for minimally acceptable offers in the third-party punishment game, we find that world religion is associated significantly more punishment. Although market integration reveals no relationship, none of the other predictors is significant. I guess so market integration doesn't lead to be more punishing of others who do harms. I don't know. I would have predicted that it was. I'm going to call bullshit on that one. For MAO and the Ultimator game, income, wealth, they all predicted these. No big deal, right? None of these are they're just getting into the weeds right now. I'm going to go ahead and skip this and kind of just rip out the discussion, okay? Like, they're just talking about a lot of weeds here, so I'm going to skip that because we're seeing the main point. We see what's going on here. Market integration, world religions, being part of a small community size, right? These are the things that matter. Our results in relationship between market integration and offers extend the findings of our previous project in several ways, including using fresh samples, better measures, new experiments, and additional controls. Ran a better experiment. Despite swapping in 10 new sites and using a different protocol, we have replicated our earlier Ultimator game findings at both the level of the individual sites and in obtaining a positive relationship between Ultimator game offers and market integration with a better measure of market integration. This relationship is now demonstrated for Dictator game, third-party punishment game offers as well, each of which reveals similarly large effects and is robust to the inclusion of a range of all these other variables. These findings also delineate two additional lines of research. First, our inclusion of participation in a world religion converges with other recent findings and tentatively supports the notion that religion may have co-evolved with complex societies to facilitate larger scale interactions. Religions made capitalism possible. Second, our analyses open up the question of why, when a third-party punisher is added to a Dictator game to create a third-party punishment game, do mean offers usually decrease? That's an interesting question. Why do those offers go down? The predictive effects of world religion disappear, and the economic variables emerge as potent correlations of others. Don't know why that is. On the punishment side, our analyses of MAOs are consistent with the idea, minimally acceptable offers are consistent with the idea that as reputational systems break down in larger populations, increasing levels of diffuse costly punishment, because it hurt them, are required to sustain large, harmonious communities. This extends earlier bivariate analysis using population mean blah 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 and blah 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 blah. Skip. Now I'm on the next paragraph. That was just stat stuff. You can read it, but it's just going to get in your head a little bit. Although our primary interest here is behavioral fairness, which includes whatever combination of motivations and expectations yield more equal divisions, two features of these results suggest that they may stand when considered as measures of intrinsic motivations. First, because no punishment opportunities exist in this Dictator game, this experiment likely provides a pure measure of intrinsic motivations for equal offers. Second, all that's saying is that our Dictator game didn't allow punishment to happen, so those measure just altruism. Second, we reran the above offer regressions for Ultimator game and third-party punishment game offers, including each population's mean MAO, minimal acceptable offer, has an additional predictor variable. Now they're doing complicated analyses that aren't really what I need to see, but let's see what works out here. If individuals are well calibrated to the threat of punishment posed by their local communities, then adding this variable should at least partially remove the impact of any threat of punishment on offers. So now they're saying the minimally acceptable offer in one's community, the higher that is, the more likely one is to get punished, so people are scared to punish. Let's statistically remove this effect and see what we have left. But guess what? Minimally acceptable offers or fear as predictor variable does not change the coefficients on market integration or world religion. So guess what? That idea of fear is not what's driving this. Market integration and world religion are. Finally, anonymity concerns regarding our experiments and results are taken up in the SOM text. Blah blah blah. Those are supplementary online materials. These findings indicate. Let's get here. These findings indicate that people living in small communities lacking market integration or world religions, absences that likely characterized all societies until the Holocene. Okay, prove that to me, bro. Display relatively little concern with fairness or punishing unfairness in transactions involving strangers or anonymous others. They don't give a shit about capitalism. This result challenges the hypothesis that successful social interaction in large-scale societies and the corresponding experimental findings arise directly from an evolved psychology that mistakenly applies kin and reciprocal-based heuristics to strangers in vast populations. I'll be reading those articles. You can guarantee that. Oh, is somebody here? Oh, sorry. I saw somebody show up on my screen, but I didn't hear them. That must have been weird for them. Okay, back to this. display relatively little concern with fairness or punishing unfairness in transactions involving strangers or anonymous others. This result challenges the hypothesis that successful social interaction in large-scale societies and the corresponding experimental findings arise directly from an evolved psychology that mistakenly applies kin and reciprocal-based heuristics to strangers in vast populations without any of the psychological workarounds that are created by norms and institutions. Whew. Moreover, it's not clear how this hypothesis can explain why we find so much variation among populations in our experimental measures and why this variation is so strongly related to market integration, world religion, and community size. The mere fact that the largest and most anonymous communities engage in substantially greater punishment relative to the smallest scale societies who punish very little challenge this interpretation. Methodologically, our findings suggest caution in interpreting behavioral experiments from industrialized populations has providing direct insights into human nature. Combining our findings with work on the links between behavioral experiments and real life suggests that such experiments elicit norms or reflect institutions that have evolved to facilitate interactions among individuals not engaged in durable relationships. This is a cultural adaptation that helps us survive after we've ruined all of our small-scale relationships, essentially. We've gotten rid of them as a species, is one way they're arguing. Not completely, but on a pretty big degree. Given this, much current work using behavioral... sorry about that. I'm just tired. Link between behavior. Okay, methodologically, our findings suggest caution in interpreting behavioral experiments from industrialized populations as providing direct insights into human nature. No, industrialized populations provide direct insights into living in industrialized cultures and how that messes with one's mind. That's what they're saying. Combining our findings with work on the links between behavioral experiments and real life, suggesting that such experiments elicit norms or reflect institutions, they have evolved to facilitate interactions among individuals not engaged in durable relationships. Given this, much current work using behavioral games appears to be studying the interaction between a particular set of norms and our evolved psychology, not tapping this psychology directly. So what they're saying here is if you're not going to study something related to capitalism, you might not want to use economic games as a source of understanding trust in human behavior. Overall, these findings lend support to the idea that the evolution of societal complexity, especially as it occurred over the last 10,000 years, involved the selective spread of those norms and institutions that best facilitated the successful exchange and interaction in socioeconomic spheres well beyond local networks or durable kin and reciprocity-based relationships. Over the last 10,000 years, we created capitalism, and capitalism has facilitated successful exchange and interaction in socioeconomics. Although differences in environmental affordances probably had a profound impact on the emergence of complex societies across the globe, the rate-determining step in societal evolution may have evolved the assembly of the norms and institutions that are capable of harnessing and extending our evolved social psychology to accommodate life in large, intense, cooperative communities. Recent experimental work among diverse industrialized populations suggests that gradual honing of these norms and institutions continues in modern society. The rate determining step, so that's the most important step in societal evolution, may have involved the assembly of the norms and institutions that are capable of harnessing and extending our evolved social psychology to accommodate life in large groups. If we were going to denote cultural evolution, we would denote the change from small groups to large groups as facilitated by world religions, capitalism, and growing community size has the reason why our culture evolved. So ultimately, when you're reading this and you're like, what is the interface? Well, again, right, we have another thing. We engage, the interface is that we actively engage in a process like capitalism or world religion. Maybe we do this because we want the meaning of life. Maybe we do this because we want more money. But the interesting one, and let's focus on it, is the money one. The more you participate in market-integrated capitalism, the fairer you are with others, right? And that's likely, like, if I'm going to predict what's going on there, right, I'm predicting that empathy's in the middle. But honestly, in terms of the interface of culture, I want to exchange my labor. I want to buy goods. I want to buy products. I want to buy services, right? I engage in that. In order for me to engage in that, I have to also learn and act in a set of values that promote fairness. And then I am automatically now a person that promotes fairness in these economic decisions. That's like the idea. I'm a little selfish, but I'm not as selfish as I would be without these institutions. So we got another interface here where it's like the person, what do they get out of it? They get all the funds of capitalism. What does society get out of it? They get people that maintain the cultural dominance of capitalism, right? They get people that are able to engage in large scale institutions, right? So when we go to the question of cultural change, right? Cultures can change because they want to be more powerful. So cultures get power. Humans that engage in the cultures get power as well. Power's in here as well. But there's still that little virus bit. I engage in an act of simple commerce, right? Over time, I develop fairness towards others and I punish unfairness towards others. So I'm essentially myself taking on the tools that are essential for the whole society to function. So we got another case where we engage in an act and then an idea, a belief, a way of behaving is tagged along with that act that forever changes me and forever changes how I interact with people in the world and forever changes like how I engage in culture, right? Market integration leading to fairness is because market integration leads me to believe that market integration is good and leads me to support it. I hope that wasn't too long. It was a little long, but hopefully it wasn't too long. I hope y'all are having a good online class.